Yes, Dr. Tudor Jones. I'm the senior tutor on OSAP.
My name is Judson Olfen. I'm obviously an American, and my capacity with OSAP is the senior academic advisor. So I'm sort of the principal contact for students who are wishing to study abroad here, answering those questions.
The vast majority of students I've taught, mostly visiting American students on this program for 30 years, appreciate very much the tutorial system, which is mainly one-to-one. And this is, in sharp contrast to the learning and teaching environment of most US universities, and indeed most UK universities today. So it's, I think it's a very student-centered form of teaching and learning. And vast majority of students I've found over the years, find this very enriching, very liberating, because it gives them the opportunity to think for themselves.
I'll put it a different way. When I first went to university, and this is a bit personal, when I first went to my grandfather looked at me and said, "Now, Judson, don't let your books get in the way of your education." And it's an anecdote, but I will say this: there is a lot that comes with coming to Oxford and studying here that is culturally enriching, that is enriching because of the city in which we live, is enriching because this has been a foundational cornerstone of thought and leaders of thought in the Western world for upwards of 1,000 years. So when I say why come study at Oxford, and I'm sure we'll get into this, yes, it's because of integration, it's because of the colleges with which we work, it's because of the long-standing history that OSAP has and learning from that experience and really trying to give its students in a student-centric way, as he said, the best possible experience here. But you will leave the city enriched academically, to be sure, but you will leave enriched in other ways too that you probably would not have anticipated, just by the nature of what Oxford as a city is, as an academic foundational hotbed of learning in the Western world. It is a guided, personalized, encouraging, and challenging educational environment where you are sat across a table from someone like Dr. Jones or one of his colleagues, where you are equally challenging one another's with questions, with viewpoints, with research, with experience, with passion, and these sorts of things. It is very individualized. It is very guided. It's very personal in that sense. And what it teaches, and you might, so to get into the bare bones structure of the tutorial, is that for what we would call a primary tutorial, a student would meet with his or her tutor once per week for maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. That tutorial, and Dr. Jones can expand upon this, but from my own experience, would consist mainly of maybe discussing the previous week's work, which would usually be illustrated in the form of an essay or maybe a problem set if you're a science student. But then also the tutor assigning a question to answer or a topic to discover. And after that, you were really left on your own. And that can sound scary, but at the same time, it's incredibly enriching, incredibly liberating, as Dr. Jones said. So you're left on your own to go read. So what does it look like in terms of tutorial to be sat one-on-one across from an expert, a preeminent authority in your subject, who gives you a question to answer and then says, in the case of me, "Now Judson, go forth and read." There's a library down the street, and Oxford has one of the preeminent libraries in the world, certainly in the Western English-speaking world, to go forth and read the best that has been thought and said on these subjects, and then come back with an argument. And your argument might be right, and it might be wrong, but that's not really the point. The point is to have an argument and to be able to fight for something or fight against something else, intellectually speaking, and to engage yourself in that to and fro with your Oxford student that is very much personally driven. There's not a lot of sort of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday structure around it, but go get yourself an education. And that's what I think that's what Oxford says most of all to its students is, now go get yourself an education.
As Judson has said, it's designed to be intellectually challenging, but also it's also informal and friendly, the atmosphere. That's a very important point. I think it's the responsibility of the tutor to draw out the student and to recognize that there are temperamental differences between students. Some students are more self-confident and proactive than others. Some are more diffident and reticent, and it's the job of the good tutor to recognize that and draw out the more reticent student.
I see OSAP as a facilitator, as an organization which opens doors that would otherwise be closed. So you are mingling with Oxford undergraduates from several different countries and hundreds of different countries. You are eating together with them. You are perhaps, as Dr. Jones said, engaged in social activities with them. So this could be the college bar. This could be rowing and other sporting events. This could be Shakespearean plays on the roofs of some of the buildings in Oxford, performing Shakespeare overlooking the dreaming spires. This could be relaxing in some of the common areas of the college. So OSAP, we really do try to open up all those doors, and everything I've just described is certainly available to students who study here. And in my encouragement to them, and what I try to get them to do, is to step through those doors.
Well, in the evening, go to a former hall in the college, or simply the college with which they're associated, or simply go to the college bar, or engaging in sporting events.
I'm actually very interested to hear what Dr. Jones says to this.
Yes. I sometimes have to say, to remind American students that the UK is not the 51st state. But,
I don't want to make light of culture shock, because your students or CUA students will experience some level of culture shock. That is undeniable. It's going to happen. And by the way, it's very, very healthy at the same time. It doesn't seem like it's healthy in the midst of it, but it is healthy. I think culture shock comes on different levels. I think the first thing that students, when they come over, they start to struggle with are the changes are the differences in vernacular. You know, it's not a cash register, it's not a till, it's not a line, it's a queue. It's not a sidewalk, it's a pavement. These sorts of things. The next level below changes in language, vernacular, and the practicalities of life, if I put it that way, are things like, what is humor? Humor has a different connotation here. Friendship has a different connotation here, by the way. Americans tend to have many more friends, which are short-lived. It's not uncommon for someone to have, 10 best friends, as we say, and then maybe 3 years from now have 10 new best friends. I have found that most British people, tell me if I'm stepping on your toes too, right? Have fewer friends, but they're more loyal.
Yes, an old English friend of mine she and her husband have lived in Indianapolis for about 30 odd years, probably more now. But she told me once, it's easier to make friends, she thought, in the United States, but it's more difficult to make close friends. But the fact that Oxford is small scale, it's localized, and the university is decentralized, I think that's in spite of the differences in culture and language and vernaculars, Judson has said, I think that the fact those features I've just described make it easy in many ways for American students, especially if they come from small towns or rural areas. Yes.
Not as much.
Yes. Yes, it's one of my favorite thoughts, yeah.
So I would think that the bases rather for students when they're here in Oxford is OSAP, the community here, their tutors, Dr. Jones and others who are doing that, and then their college. So those are kind of the three bases for community for OSAP students as a whole. The start of that is certainly the OSAP, the orientation program that we provide. We also try many times during the term to bring the OSAP students back together again. So we offer anywhere from 4 to 5 different day excursions throughout the course of the term, which are included in tuition and fees. We typically hire or hire a private bus and take students to places like Windsor Castle or Cambridge, or Portsmouth or Warwick Castle, in London, Bath, Stonehenge, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know if you mentioned this, Judson, but their home accommodation in Oxford, obviously they are sharing that space with other students on the program, from various US colleges and universities, different from their own. And obviously that is a factor which engenders a sense of community.
Absolutely.
And in some cases, they are sharing accommodation also with British students, British undergraduates at the University of Oxford in some cases. It's a small city, it's easy to get around, public transportation is good, but most places are within walking distance for the student. So that's a big advantage.
Yeah, I would just tack on to that it's I think as a study abroad experience, it's a city you can get to know in a 3-month period or maybe a 6-month period. But a 3-month period, you can start to get a little bit of a grasp on the city here. It's close enough to big things, London, as Dr. Jones has said, but it's small enough to engender a sense of community if you get out into it. I love walking through Cornmarket Street, which is one of the principal pedestrian streets in Oxford, and seeing people I know. I probably can't walk from one end to the other without recognizing a face. I might not know their name. It's odd because we've said a lot about the education being very personalized, and I think Oxford's a city that can also be personalized in those ways. And so there's a good symbiotic relationship between those two things.
Fish and chips. No, but yes, I like fish and chips. Oxford's, for a small city, has got a number of restaurants and cafes and sort of wide-ranging cuisine, really. It's always had a good restaurant culture. And most pubs serve popular dishes now, like fish and chips. And gammon, egg and chips. I don't think you...
Gammon would be ham, egg and chips.
Ham, egg and chips, which I particularly like.
I think something that's different here, but which is delicious, is like a good pie. I don't mean an apple pie or a pumpkin pie, but the Brits have this fashion of taking a small bowl of pastry, which is on all sides enclosed by pastry, not just on the top like some pies in America, and making it savory rather than sweet. So maybe steak and ale pie. Think of it sort of like a thick stew with the ingredients. Chicken and leek is a popular pie. So a thick stew that we might have, very thick stew, but put inside of a pastry dish, topped with pastry and then baked.
Well, first and foremost, London. It's a great city. There's a lot to see there, apart from as I said, the historic landmarks. There are exhibitions, art galleries, museums, concerts of all musical genre, theatre, including musical theatre, film, and so on. So there's a lot to see, and I try and give students some sort of informal recommendations on my part of where to go.
You hadn't noticed yet, Dr. Jones is a native Londoner. Devon and Cornwall. I'm an outdoorsy kind of guy. I like the countryside in contrast to his liking more of an urban person. I like rolling hills, sunlit uplands, those sorts of things. And so Devon and Cornwall is sort of the peninsula that sticks out from the southwest corner of England, and is stunningly beautiful. It really is. Coastlines, mountains galore. the advice given to me was to treat your study time like a full-time job. In other words, I'm going to be at a desk in this library from 9 to 4 with an hour lunch, maybe, these 4 to 6 days a week.
Structure your social and other activities and indeed your travel plans around your tutorial, not the other way around.
Pick a fight. Pick an intellectual fight. And that stretches the mind way more than receiving information and putting it on a test.
By all means, ask the tutor how he or she would like to be referred. Sometimes tutors are happy with first name terms. Other cases, Mr. or Miss or Doctor, and so on.
Say, walk around Oxford and look upwards, because it's worth looking at. The spires are beautiful, and the facades are beautiful, and the buildings are beautiful, but also let your mental gaze travel upwards. I would just say, come to Oxford and come and be a part of something bigger than yourself.